Welcome to everybody. Uh, I wanted to say first that I am extremely proud of my wife. Many of you may or may not know that the book probably started many years ago as Amy jotted down little notes and stories that each of our kids would surprisingly and happily say and express to us, sometimes good things, sometimes bad things, but they were all memorable moments that Amy kept a good log of for each of them individually. And while some of these stories are shared in this book, there are many more stories which maybe will become fodder for future books. Who knows? Anyway, I'm extremely proud of her. It's been many years in the making, and I hope you all enjoy the book and the stories as much as I have. Um, at this time, I would like to introduce Debbie Fisher to take over a little the Master of Ceremonies. So I think Debbie's on. I think I saw her. But Debbie Reed Fisher is the award-winning author of novels for teens and tweens, and has been praised by Kirkus Reviews for balancing weighty issues with a sharp wit. Her middle school grade novel, This Is Not the Abbey Show by Random House and Delacorte, was released in 2016. She is a graduate at the University of Miami. Debbie worked for many years as an agent for film and TV, and then as a middle and high school teacher. She is the daughter of an Air Force colonel who served as a diplomatic attaché and grew up in England, Greece, and Israel. She is grateful to have had a childhood surrounded by many languages and cultures. Her mother is Cuban Jewish and her father is from New England with Scottish roots. Debbie currently resides in South Florida with her husband and two sons. And with that, I will hand it over to Debbie.
Arya, do you work for the FBI? I'm like blown away by this introduction, was not expecting it. Amy, this is for you. Rabbi Amy Grossblatt Passa. Mazel tov, first of all. And as weird as this all is, it's also fantastic. I'm so happy to see faces I haven't seen in a long time, and we're all here to celebrate this fantastic book and Rabbi Amy Grossblatt Pessa's achievement. I'm just going to call you Amy from now on because that could get old. Time is of the essence. And I can't be more excited because about, I want to say 2 years ago, maybe a little under 2 years ago, we had a very fateful lunch where Amy sat down and told me about this book she'd been writing and she wanted to pursue publication. And I proceeded to be a complete Debbie Downer. I said, listen, I need you to go into this with eyes wide open. And then I went forward and listed all of the awful things about the publishing industry and how much of a heartbreaker it is. And just for an example, some of the truths that I shared with her came out in an article in Publishers Weekly in the mid-2000s, when they stated that statistically, according to the numbers, the odds of getting a book deal are the same as getting a part in a Broadway show or a spot in the NBA. Statistically, that's the same. And I proceeded to tell her that it's a course of years to get published, you need an agent, and blah, blah, blah. Well, at the end of this conversation, in which I thought Amy may never speak to me again, she still was very interested in pursuing this book deal. And I thought to myself, wow, she really is a writer, because no one writes because they have a choice. And I knew two things. Number one, that the premise of her book was very original. I had seen a lot of parenting books, but none that incorporated Judaic principles to support the personal stories that give parenting guidance. And I don't want to even say advice, because her book is such a blessing in that it gives you, the reader, agency about how you raise your kids and how you raise yourself. Choices are presented to you, and you figure out the advice on your own. But more about that later. So that was the first thing I knew. She had, she was what I call an FOD. Shonda Rhimes calls that an FOD. She's an award-winning screenwriter. First, only different. She was the first to come up with this premise, the only one I've seen, and it's a bit different. And all of that's really good in the arts, anytime you have the arts. And the second thing I knew about Amy from reading her blog posts and her writings here and there is something that maybe not everybody is aware of. Amy is an entertainer. And I don't mean that jazz hands, you know, singing and dancing kind of entertainer. That's me sometimes. Amy understands how to entertain people on the page. She understands pacing and suspense and buildups and payoffs when you're reading, sort of subtle, nuanced elements of writing that you as a reader don't realize are really going on. People think you read silently, but the fact is you don't read silently. There's a voice inside your head that is entertaining you as you're reading. And Amy understands it much like someone who has an ear for music. There's a rhythm to writing. There are no long-winded passages that are going to bore you. And Aria, give me the hook, because I can go on and on about this book. I'm in love with it, and I love your wife, and I just could go on and on about this. She understands how to entertain. One of the blessings of this book, the many blessings, is the economy of language that she's so gifted with. The chapters are really short. So, I mean, we all know Amy is a searcher and a thinker. If that doesn't, if those words don't really describe you, that's okay, because the chapters are so short, it's like having an intellectual snack. They are enough to inspire you, but more importantly, you can escape through these stories because they are personal, they are authentic, they're very relatable. And the one thing that I'm so grateful for in Amy's writing is she acknowledges without any judgment, much like Amy herself, the book is not judgmental. She acknowledges that your children are going to do things and say things that fly in the face of everything you have taught them, and even the Jewish values you have instilled in them, because God gave them, surprise, a mind of their own. And she acknowledges that in every chapter. And this kind of writing is a bravery on a level of which most people will never experience. And so I really, really appreciate the authenticity, the honesty, the relatability, and the fact that she gives you as the reader the agency to decide how you raise your kids and the agency to decide how you raise yourself. There's a lot in it about how to raise yourself. It's all supported by Judaics, halachically. It's all supported through the power of story. And what is the Bible? It's the power of story. It's story after story in which we are inspired. And that is much of Amy's book. I can't say enough about it. I woke up early to read it. And I hope it will be your parenting Bible and just a source of inspiration to everybody. It's also terrific discussion questions at the end of every chapter, great for sisterhood meetings, for book club meetings, anything in a classroom, any place where people want to sit around, discuss, and debate, and you don't have to be Jewish because, as we all know, Jewish values are universal. So I can't wait to see how far and wide this book will go. Mazel tov on getting a book deal. I use you now to brag to other people that I know someone who got a book deal at the speed of light, which you richly deserve. Am I getting the hook?
Thank you.
Yes, it's time.
Thank you.
Mwah.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Thank you, Aryeh. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to also offer a shout out to my publisher, Larry Udelson, who is on this call as well. If you see his screen, it looks like he's in San Francisco. I think that's the Golden Gate Bridge. So thank you. And he's just informed me, good news, that if you are an e-reader, hopefully the book will be available digitally within a week or so. So we can be on the lookout for the book in digital form. All right, so here we are, everybody. Book launch in the time of coronavirus. Who would have thought, right? So this book was supposed to be published a month earlier. And if that would have been the case, I don't know whether we would have been able to meet in person. And as most of you know me, my thought was, what's the meaning behind this? What is this a sign of? What's the message that I'm supposed to glean here? I don't have the answer to that, but I do know one of the silver linings is the benefit of having so many of you from all across the world literally joining me. And so I'm just going to bask in my gratitude for Zoom and for all of you for taking the time out to be here. A special blessing to those who might be celebrating Easter today. I hope your holiday is blessed. And here we go. The book. Ari gave you a little bit of a insight into how this book was created or how it came into being. So Parenting on a Prayer originated when my kids were young. I started keeping a journal for each one of them when they were born, starting from the time they were born. And I would include things like their first words, silly stories, things like calling a Granny Smith apple a Nanny Smith apple, like things that just I thought were humorous and I wanted my kids to know when they became parents. And my intention was to give each of them this book of their own childhood tales. I saved report cards and things they're probably just going to throw away. But in any event, they're all in one place. And I had my kids very close together. At one point, I had a 5, a 3, and a 1-year-old. So they were close in age, and I didn't really have much time to do anything besides parent. It was a full-time job, as it usually is, but this seemed to be a much more compressed full-time job. And I was always looking for advice, right? How can I become a better mom? What can I do differently? Where can I learn? When I was able to read books, which was quite infrequently in those days, I would try to just glean some information that would help me become a better parent. And it happened on a Shabbat morning, a rare Shabbat morning that my children were in babysitting. Normally they were running around the sanctuary, and those of you who remember my kids back in the day can attest to that. They would be running, and just for me to sit for 5 seconds was a gift. So they happened to be in babysitting, and I was looking at the prayer book, and I was probably in my head at the same time going through one of the multitude of situations that, why did you do that? Why did you say that? What should have you done? How did you parent? And so I was having this internal parenting dialogue and looking at the words in the prayer book. And in a moment of silence, it was as if the words jumped up off the page and started whispering, like, pay attention. You see that word Shema? It means listen. Maybe listen in a different way. Oh, that's interesting. And then I went back the next week and I'm flipping through, and, I was really praying for some of it, but a lot of it I was really, Lahit Palel means to judge ourselves, right? So in that judging of ourselves, of how we can improve, I was seeing other words. I looked at the Amidah prayer and I read God of our ancestors of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, and thought, oh, so what's our connection to our family? How do we raise our kids to be connected to their family? And so what proceeded to happen over a period of about 10 years, from 2007 to 2017, was the weaving of a tapestry of these journals and stories of my kids and the prayers from the prayer book. And so I've designed the book with 18 chapters. Each chapter is related to a specific prayer. And the prayer is associated with a value that I think is important in raising kids. So I'll share a few of those examples. Ma tovu, how good it is that we're here. I connect that to blessings and tell the story about blessings vis-a-vis my kids. The Birchot HaShachar, the morning blessings, are about gratitude. And I'll be sharing a story in a little bit about, related to my daughter. She doesn't quite know that yet. I hope she won't run into the other room and make me change the story in the meantime, but it's a sweet story, more about me than it is about her. Things like peace. How do we create peace in our homes with the prayer Sim Shalom? The Torah prayer, Eitz Chaim, is about learning. Ein Keloheinu is about confidence. Aleinu is about responsibility. And all of these stories are woven together to create a tapestry of the synergy between the prayer that I believe offers parenting advice and the stories of raising my kids. So I wanted to also mention, and I think Debbie might have as well, is this book just for those who are familiar with the prayer book or those who are Jewish? And my answer is absolutely not. As long as you are an open-minded person who wants to learn about spirituality and wants to learn about child rearing and parenting and even about yourself, this book is for you. I have many friends who are not Jewish who are reading the book. One of my friends is a very devout Catholic woman who shared with me her daughter came home to visit. Her daughter happens to be I think a pediatric nurse up in Tennessee. And she let her daughter leave home, this was a couple weeks ago, leave home with a copy of my book because she felt that it was so important for her just to have, being a pediatric nurse, to help families when they are parenting and in their struggles. So I just really wanted to also stress that while it will probably make more sense if you are familiar with the liturgy, with the words of the prayer book, you absolutely do not need to be familiar with the words. And it's really about making the words your own and connecting to the values that I am proposing. And as Debbie indicated, to make them your own. Right? Like part of being on this parenting journey is for you to run these values through your own personal filter. What works for you? And I also want to express that this is a helpful book for grandparents as well. There are many grandparents who are integral in helping to raise their kids, their grandkids, and this book, I believe, will be helpful. In the back with each section are activities that help to promote the value that's being expressed in addition to discussion questions. And when Debbie had mentioned that the book was short, in my design of the book, I remember one of my greatest frustrations, I already shared, was not being able to read anything in its entirety when I was a mom of young children. So by the time I got back to the book, it was like, who are these characters? What happened? And I'd have to go back almost like 2 or 3 chapters before anything made sense. So that's when I became a big fan of nonfiction, because I couldn't remember the characters at the time. And so I've designed the book with very short snippets. So each chapter has an aleph, a bet, a gimel, and a 1, 2, 3, and it's maybe 1 or 2 pages so that you can feel successful at the end of the day. If you are a parent of young children, you could say, wow, I actually read part 1 of chapter 1. And that was something that I kept in mind in the design, because I remember for myself that was a frustration, and I wanted to, and I want people to feel a sense of accomplishment, right? At the end of the day, they can check something and said, okay, I was able to read something from start to finish and not get distracted. So now I'd like to read a little bit from the book. I'm just going to read the first couple paragraphs of the invitation. I wish someone had taught me the prayer for parenting. What magic words did I need to utter in order to make everything unfold with ease? A few whispers muttered under my breath, or a loud shout at the top of my lungs to make my kids stop fighting would have been a godsend. Perhaps I wasn't aware of the special incantation that would mend broken bones and heal broken hearts, for I would have prayed those words with desperation and deep intention, if only they would have made my parenting journey easier. But alas, we know there are no such words, wishes, or desires of the heart that can help us navigate parenting unscathed. Most of the time, it feels like parenting doesn't have a prayer, literally and metaphorically. How many times did I ask myself, do I even stand a chance? Those are the opening words of the book. The next excerpt I'd like to share is from the chapter on gratitude. That seems to be the energy of the day. Gratitude for being here, gratitude for you all being here, gratitude for this book coming to light. So one of the prayers that we recite in the morning are the morning blessings, also known as Birchot HaShachar. And this blessing specifically goes as follows. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who opens up the eyes of the blind. And so now I'll share how I wove together the words of the prayer book and the stories from raising my kids. The other day, I was driving my daughter to school. It was a typical morning, except for the fact that she had just gotten her first pair of glasses. She was instructed to wear them at school, and if needed, at other times during the day. Carefully, she removed them from their case and gently placed them on her face. Silence. A few seconds later, I hear an exuberant, "I love the world." I waited before responding, and then she continued, "I love the world, Ima. It's so beautiful. Is this what everyone sees? Wow, look at all these colors. It's just so bright. I love it, Ima." I wasn't quite sure how to respond, but I was sure that I had just witnessed God opening up the eyes of the blind. Despite the fact that I felt like a horribly negligent parent for allowing her vision to get so poor without my having noticed, I was grateful for having witnessed her experience the world in living color. Using my daughter's experience allowed me to understand one meaning behind this prayer. My daughter's somewhat blind eyes were opened to see the beauty of the world. I will always remember that wonder and look of awe in her face as our ordinary drive to school became extraordinary. While thanking God for opening up the eyes of the blind can be read literally, I believe that these words can also be read figuratively. All of us are metaphorically blind in different situations. Some of us are blind to others' feelings. Some of us are blind to new experiences. And some of us are blind when dealing with certain subject areas, such as physics, economics, or English. Asking God to open our eyes means allowing ourselves to see things from a fresh perspective, or gaining an understanding that we might not have had previously. I believe that sharing this idea with our kids can be extremely helpful, especially as they mature. There are many things that at first we try, we may not succeed in, like being a good friend. It takes time to learn to read social cues, to understand facial expressions, to be patient and understanding, and to learn how and when to put others' needs before your own. Many elements are involved in being a good friend, but once this process is learned and eventually integrated into our children's psyches, they won't have to go through the friendship checklist, which is in the previous chapter you'll have to read. Instead, they will know intuitively how to be a good friend because their eyes will have been opened. Obtaining this gift of understanding of sight, both literally and figuratively, can fill us with gratitude. Gratitude to see the beauty in our world on a daily basis, not just when we put on glasses for the first time. Gratitude for the gift of being able to obtain a new understanding, a fresh perspective that can help us navigate through relationships, situations, and ultimately life itself. So I hope that that short example gave you a little taste of what the rest of the book includes. 18 different prayers woven together with over 50 anecdotes. And I look forward to hearing from you. For those of you who have purchased the books, thank you. For those of you who are going to purchase the books, thank you. And if you could email me at parentingonaprayer@gmail.com and let me know your feedback, that would be great.